Hey guys, I'm joined with Rahat and Kunal, the dream team for FinTechs. How you guys going?
Good, good, Raghav. How are you? Thanks for having us back. It's good to talk about another complex structure, trust, and just keep people informed about what's going on in the market and what's the best way of using these structures.
Yeah, complex, but we're trying
Thank
to
you,
make it
thank you,
less.
Raghav.
Hey man.
Thanks for having me here as well. It's my first time at your podcast. It's very excited. And yeah, I'll share my personal experience as well towards the end with you guys. So, no, keen for it. Looking forward to it.
100%. Sounds good, man. Very excited to have this discussion with you both because you're experts in the field. Rahat mentioned we are talking complex, sophisticated structures, but our aim is just to spread knowledge and trying to make this sound a little more simple and give people insight on what they can achieve. The reason I've brought you here today, and I've been asking for a while to do this, I know we've been slammed with financial year, end of financial year, so happy new financial year, by the way. But while we're here today, is we've been seeing a lot of headlines. So the property market is moving, investors are coming to the market, and there's a lot more kind of information available online, YouTube, social media, even a lot of clickbait, available as well. And we deal with a lot of clients, and we are understanding on how to scale portfolios. So I've keep hearing about clients come on board and they're talking about unlimited borrowing power. How do I scale past the one or two properties? And yes, there are things we can leverage for clients as a team. And that's what I want to understand and talk about with you guys, how we can basically allow clients to scale their portfolios because everyone's hearing now, that there's stories about people owning five properties, 10 properties, even literally 100 properties. And we all know that the average consumer today can't borrow that much. We're normally looking at like a average consumer borrowing around the $1.2 million mark in Australia today. So how is it possible that people can scale that borrowing power and buy multiple properties past their original borrowing capacity? So we have specific ways that we help clients, scale their portfolio, implement the right structures, and obviously that's where you guys come in. But it's no secret. So trust structures do allow the average property investor to, leverage beyond the means. But then it's very sophisticated lending, which makes us, really have to understand, is it the right structure for them and does it suit their lifestyle and their personal requirements? So we've personally helped clients purchase more than like seven properties under 12 months. So, we're across how it works. We work directly with you to make sure we can scale. But I'll throw it over to you guys. So if I'm an investor and I'm looking to scale my portfolio, and I'm telling you, I need to understand what structures I can, implement to do this. What would you recommend for me?
I think Raghav, before talking about all that, I think it's very important to understand what a trust is and
Yeah.
what are the different types of trust and what are the potential upsides and downsides of the structure before getting into all that. Look, trust is a legal entity where the trustee is holding the assets on behalf of the beneficiaries, and they're effectively managing all the compliance work as well. There are different types of trust. There's discretionary trust, there's unit trust, there's hybrid trust, there's testamentary trust. But I think when it comes to property, we're going to keep it short and narrow and talk about discretionary trust, which is very common and used by a lot of people to build that property portfolio. I think just going with the flow, there's potentially a lot of upsides, but there are a lot of downsides as well of having um, that property within that structure. I think the biggest upside has to be that the tax optimization. Um, you have the flexibility as a trustee to distribute the gain from within the trust to certain family members, um, provided all the eligibility criteria are met, which can potentially save thousands of dollars. What I mean by that is, if you were to buy that property in your personal name, you end up paying tax at your tax rate, which can potentially be even 47% in a lot of the cases that we have. So trust provides that flexibility to buy the property within the trust. And then if you potentially make a gain, if you've got a family member, if you've got a spouse who's taken a year off, or you've got kids who are over 18 and tax residents of Australia, that you can distribute that gain to them at a potentially much lower tax rate, which can save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. So that's probably the biggest benefit. Talking about another benefit, which is estate planning. You can pass on the ownership to another family member. It's quite easy within the trust compared to your personal name. In a personal name, you potentially have to dispose of the property, book the gain, pay the stamp duty again, and then pass on the ownership. In a trust, there's no direct ownership, so you can pass that on. Another major benefit is asset protection. So there's a trust, and if you've got a trustee company behind a trust, which is a corporate structure, which is limited by shares, um, it gives you flexibility in terms of asset protection, which can potentially be a huge game changer. Because if you don't want your personal assets to be in the picture, you can form a trust with a corporate trustee that provides you a bit more protection rather than just buying your property within just the trust or in your personal name.
Mhm.
So, look, I'm not the expert in the next upside I'm going to answer, but it does help preserving some sort of borrowing power as well. We've seen in the cases where if the property is self-sufficient, being the key, and it's positively geared, the banks look at the financials, and if they're fully satisfied the property is able to sustain itself, you can potentially buy another property within a trust structure and just, grow the portfolio. But having said all that, there's a lot of downsides as well. And probably the biggest one has to be the cost. The cost of setting up this structure can potentially vary from $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the state. And then that's an upfront cost, which many people, don't want to incur. And then there is the maintenance cost as well. You have to lodge a separate tax return every single year. So it's sort of adding more compliance work on your end. You still have to pay for the accounting fee and all that sort of stuff, ASIC fee if you've got a company. So you just have to keep those into the calculations before you get into the structure. That's very important. And another massive downside is that land tax is a big factor when you're buying a property within the trust. In especially in New South Wales, if you buy a property within the trust, you don't get any land tax free threshold, which you possibly would if you were to buy that property in your personal name. I think the threshold's about 1.1 mil in your personal name, and in a trust, there's nothing. So essentially paying land tax from the very first dollar.
Mhm.
So what we do is, along with you, obviously, we tell all these upsides and downsides to the client, so they're fully informed about what they're getting into, what sort of cost is involved, and then just assist them in making that decision. Obviously, we can't give them financial advice. We can just give them, sort of the tax implications of these structures and how they can potentially, how this structure can potentially assist them with growing their portfolio. But ultimately, it's the client's call to, make that decision if they want to buy the property within the trust or in their personal name.
Yeah, I think you laid out some really important factors on tax benefits, how it can implement, from how you can implement tax benefits long term as well. So every client's going to be very different. You're going to see a lot of positives and also negatives. And to your
Yep,
point, in terms of the downside of a trust, so let's cover
yep,
the downsides first. We always
yep,
make clients aware that there are these, upfront costs. So it's not going to be suitable for everyone. Not everyone's
yep.
going to have additional cash flow. Not everyone's going to have a
Correct.
desire to leverage trust in the right way to actually scale to wherever you want to go to. So it's not going
Yep,
to be a one size fits all solution. And these
100%.
downsides with that, kind of upfront cost, the yearly audit costs, and everything else that might maybe included, including the land tax, it's not going to be, someone who's not going to be looking to scale a portfolio, someone who's
Yep,
low on cash flow, for example. So you've got to understand what kind of person we're pitching these models to before we
yep,
kind of showcase, the upside as well. But from an upside perspective, we have worked together and we have leveraged, trust lending to scale portfolios. And you mentioned something very important to be able to preserve the borrowing power in under a trust. So as an example, if I created a trust, I bought a property, the bank gave me a $600,000 loan to buy that property under that one trust. That property must be self-sufficient to your point. So
yep,
ideally, that means the rental income I'm receiving for the property is covering the mortgage. So that $600,000 that I have taken out as a loan from the bank, I can then recycle, i.e., reuse with a different lender in the market. That's the main upside of a trust. So
yep,
we always work with a team of brokers that we work with together. We work with you guys as well. So we want to understand the full picture. It's very important not just understand can I open a trust, but borrowing powers. So your borrowing power between your personal names and trust and different kinds of scenarios are very, very different from a variety of reasons. Negative gearing aspects, all these kind of things we have to understand. And that way we can make a call to see if trust is still right for you and if you can actually borrow more. Now, it doesn't take away the fact that from a property perspective, people get confused on this. Even though you can recycle your borrowing power, you still need your cash deposit upfront to buy more property.
yep.
So that was there's no kind of free property in
Shortcuts,
this
yeah.
game. Yeah, you're not going to get everything going your way. So a lot of clients come misinformed and think that they're able to get into the market without putting a deposit. Now, not all clients we work with have to save the cash. So to scale a portfolio, if you're getting deposit from cash saved, equity in a previous purchase, refinancing a property you bought recently as an investment, and then leveraging that equity to buy another property, these are all the strategies we work with from a property scaling perspective to help clients. So if I'm, trying to get one client who wants to buy 5 properties in under 3 years, it's very important for us to understand from a market timing perspective, cycle, look at the research. If you buy the first property that outperforms and builds up some equity, we can then use trust lending, do a refinance, take out some equity and scale. And that comes with a massive advantage to that client who's going to, reach to certain financial goals a lot quicker. And also shows you the opportunity cost of buying the wrong property. Now, long term, I believe properties will grow in value, not all at the same scale. But
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you have a property that doesn't grow for 3 years versus in a property that you can see significant upside in 3 year time frame, leveraging the equity and buying one or two more assets is a massive game changer. It's literally a lifetime of wealth difference. And that's where
100%.
we kind of come into play. So have you guys, not just from our clients, because I know, we're working a lot in this trust space right now, but what are you
Yep.
seeing from, other investors or other people looking to get into the market? Are they leveraging this trust structure? Are you getting more questions on this kind of sophisticated lending method?
I think Raghav, to answer that point, you've raised some really good points. People are getting trying to get more creative now,
Mhm.
especially with the interest rates going up. They're looking at different structures, be it trust, be it self-managed super fund, or be it, personal name, pulling out the equity and then using to buy another property. But at the same time, it's just really important to understand what their long-term goals are. I think first you need to analyze what their long-term goals are, and then you can sort of make them comfortable about these different structures. If for example, there's a guy who just wants 1 or 2 properties in the next 10 years, then he's potentially just better off buying the property in his personal name,
Yeah.
rather than the trust. Again, so you're just telling them the upsides and the downsides, and then assisting them with making that decision of getting into these structures. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, we're getting a lot of trust queries now. People are trying to be more creative and beat the market, which makes sense. As obviously, given the interest rates is close to 6% still, we're going to see some cuts now, hopefully. But given the interest rates are still close to 5.5 to 6%, so people are finding it hard to borrow more money within given their means and their income levels. So trust can potentially help, but again, it's not a shortcut. It's not gonna be rich in a very short time frame. You have to apply the principles. You have to understand there's opportunity cost in every single thing, and just make sure it's aligned with your long-term goal.
Yeah, and I love the fact you
Oh,
pointed out it should be aligned to long-term goals. So every
Yep,
time we have a client and we're looking at their strategy, looking at what they want to do, it should be matching up with ultimately the next 3 to 5 years. Does this structure make sense for you? And if it
yep,
does, let us implement it the right way at the right pace
correct,
according to your
correct,
situation. Very, very crucial.
correct.
And why I also brought this up is because there's so much misinformation. So I know
Yes,
for a fact not every accountant will be aware of types of trusts and how we can leverage this from a property perspective to scale a portfolio. Online, you go on Google and you type in trust structures to recycle
yeah, yeah,
bonding power. I've had clients go into this massive like wormhole and they're not getting the right information. I've
yep.
literally had a
That
client,
is true.
yeah, I've had a client come to us and they said I was doing a lot of research on trust structures given your recommendation based on their goals. And they came back thinking that if they create a trust, they don't even own the assets. They were thinking we, as their buyers advocates, will be owning the properties we buy from them. So that's
Wow.
the amount of misinformation available
Yep,
online today, and that's where I feel like people need to get the right advice, and that's why if you reach out to fintechs, for example, I know for a fact you guys are experts in the field. You know how these structures work in all of the complexities, pros and cons.
yep,
To Rat's point, the first thing he'll bring up, even Kunal, like negatives. Make sure you understand why this might
yes.
not be right for you, and then we can work on does the structure make sense to your goals, which is very, very crucial. That's
that's
awesome.
very true. That's
Yeah.
very true. I think Raghav, the main thing is the amount of misinformation that there is in the market. it's crazy.
Yeah.
We get clients who've bought the property within the trust. They come to us. They tell us, we've got a massive land tax bill that
Mm.
we received. All of a sudden, this wasn't told to us before we got into this property game, and then now we have to pay an additional $5,000 to $10,000 every single year
Yeah.
just in land tax because we got into this structure,
Yeah.
which we might have avoided if we were to buy the property in their personal name. So all of whatever you've said, it just completely makes sense. There's so much misinformation in the market. So it's very important, just to work for the client rather than just pushing your services to the client,
Yes.
which is eventually the goal. I want to have a good night's sleep. So I just want to make sure the client's fully satisfied with whatever they're getting. So that's extremely important.
Yeah, and then these additional costs, like obviously for some clients, this may not seem like much because we know
Yeah,
the position, then we know their personal situations, their cash flow, and
correct.
other clients, this can make or break them holding a property for long.
100%. Yes.
So even though you've done the right thing, you've gone to the market, you've bought a property, but you weren't aware of these additional costs, just even maintenance costs, land tax, things of that nature, and
Yep.
they come in and they're paying 5 to 10 grand additional per year, to your point, that
Yep.
might mean that let go of the asset before they see a gain. And ultimately,
Exactly.
we just wasted 2 years of their lives
Yep.
in the investment game, and they've come out with a very negative, perception of property. So I
Yep.
think to your point, you need to make sure clients understand everything to their
Yep.
situation. But at the same time, if you do leverage this and it does suit, you can really scale a portfolio. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that is
Yep.
one
Yep.
upside, maybe we're not talking about enough. I think are a lot of the negatives, which is fine. But in
Yep.
general, I think if you can make this work for yourself, the difference is you'll likely be capped, any Australian will likely be capped at, one or two properties in their lifetime.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
that's just a fact. And I think
Yep.
right now, what we're seeing is people are leveraging property to really grow their wealth. And ultimately, one property isn't going to get you to, most likely not going to get you to your financial goals. Maybe even two might not get you there. But if you're talking about 3 to 5 to 6 to, plus properties, I think then you have a real shot of achieving some serious wealth creation. And that can help
Yep.
you multiply in all aspects of life. And I think that's where this structure is very strong in that case. And I think that's where we're really educating clients on, this is a way we can go about the market. It's all about securing the right properties, controlling cash flow, because you are over leveraging yourself. That is very, very
Yep.
crucial to understand. The banks, if they tell you that, hey, you can only borrow $800,000, but you've gone and bought five properties worth like $700,000 each, you've leveraged yourself 5x. If
Yep.
all those properties are
Correct.
negatively geared, $10,000 a year, there might be no
Mm-hmm.
chance that you can hold these properties for long term. You might be digging yourself
100%.
in a bigger hole. So
Yep.
to Rahat's point, we need to make sure that the cash flow situation is working. Only then you're ever going to be signed off from a trust perspective anyway to keep buying more properties and recycling that borrowing power. But ultimately, if you do all these things right, understand the risks, understand the potential downsides, there's a lot of positives in the long term as well.
I
Correct.
agree.
Raghav, I think that's why, you need the right guidance, you need the
Yeah,
right team. As
yeah,
you guys, you have meetings with clients like multiple times just to understand, their situation, what their long-term goals are and things like that. So, I mean, with the right guidance, once they know, what they want, then you guys provide that guidance. So they are satisfied with that in the end.
yeah. And could not tell us, so you've leveraged trust structures this year actually. So you've bought a property under trust, and obviously you're in the space, so you know exactly what that means for you and your
Correct.
situation. Can you talk us a bit
Correct.
about, your kind of mindset coming into property investing and why you chose a trust for your situation?
Yeah, sure. So this was my first property I was getting into, and it was with my brother. So
Mhm.
normally, people buy with their partners, but we, me and my brother, we thought we'd just buy it together. So in our situation, we would, and guided by you guys as well, mainly because we just wanted like to not limit our borrowing power in the next couple of years when we want to buy our own individual homes. So we thought, maybe we could get into the trust structure, both of us can get an investment property, and hoping that in the next couple of years, it gets into positive gearing, given the interest rates are going down and things like that. So hence we chose the trust structure for us. So then we don't limit ourselves to the next couple of years when we want to get our own individual houses at that time. So that was the main thinking behind us getting into the this structure at this time.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that to your point, flexibility is very crucial. Like a lot of people think, I want to build a portfolio, but how do I buy my own home if I want to keep these properties long term? So a lot of our clients are leveraging trust, for that point because they can keep as many
Mm-hmm.
investment properties as possible as long as all their cash flow is making sense. And they're basically recycling the same amount of power in their personal name, borrowing power in their
Yep.
personal name to buy their own home, as an example. And Kunal, we made a very calculated decision with your property because, to your point, interest rates are going down. So if you look at all the market predictions, RBA looking to go into that, 2.8 to 3% cash rate, which means the banks are
Mm-hmm.
going to give you an interest rate of 5 to 5.5% for an investment property. So if you're buying
Correct.
any property with like a 5% yield today, rent will always go
Mm-hmm.
up slightly as well. But within 18 to
Yep.
24 months, that property should be, neutrally geared or positively cash flowed. And in all honesty, it's not easy in today's market to buy a positively cash flow property, especially in the right locations, metro capital cities. Now we have a few ways
Mm-hmm.
to make it work, but overall, like I think 5% yields plus, that will get you into that situation where you should be considering a trust if you want to scale a portfolio, because over the next 24 months, you should be in a situation where that borrowing power can be recycled, and then we can keep scaling that
Mm-hmm.
portfolio. Is that something that you're always kind of thinking about at the back of your mind?
That is correct. That is
Yeah.
absolutely correct. And that's what we were thinking, and we just hoping this happens. But
Yeah.
yes, that's what's we were thinking at that time. Yeah.
I think Raghav, you're spilling out all the secrets. Yeah, you've covered it all. I think having a really good rental yield and just making sure the property makes sense within the trust, that's extremely important. Like if you get into the wrong property within the trust, you're not just getting the negative gearing, you're also bearing the cost of the setting of the trust and potentially maintenance of the trust. So it's really important just to have that right person behind you who can assist you find the right property. Right property being the key. Even in Kunal's case, we're sort of validating the point that we're practicing what we preach. We're getting to the property which is going to turn positively geared in the next 12 to 24 months, given the interest rates are going in the right direction now. So if hopefully we see 3 to 4 cuts in the next 12 to 18 months, that's really going to assist Kunal with, getting that positive gearing and then potentially getting into the market again and then buying the property in his personal name or within the trust, whatever he decides. So yeah, again, having that expert behind you just really changes the game.
100%, man. And can I ask you just one more question? So we know that there's a whole negative gearing aspect in trust structures where people think you can't really claim it. Now, I know that these gains, for me, sorry, I should say the negative gearing aspect can be realized towards the end of that, purchase, where if you sell the asset, we can kind of get that, those funds back. Can you just explain in layman's terms how that kind of works?
Yep. So it's a bit technical. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible.
Mhm.
So in a trust structure, compared to your personal name, in your personal name, you get the negative gearing straight away in terms of a tax refund. It just gets offset from your taxable income. But in a trust, it works differently in the sense that the negative gearing is being accumulated over the years, and you're not getting the benefit straight away, but you're not losing the benefit either. In the sense that essentially, if the property makes that capital gain, you can offset these losses against the gain and then distribute the remaining capital gains. So you're not losing any sort of negative gearing. Because a lot of the people have this perception that, in a trust structure, we've just lost the negative gearing and we're not getting any sort of refunds. It's just a timing issue. You essentially, once the property becomes either positively geared or there's a net capital gain towards the end, you can offset all these losses within the trust and then distribute the gain. So essentially hasn't lost any of the negative gearing. It's still sitting there, but it's just getting accumulated within the trust.
Amazing. I think we just myth busted, something that a lot of people think when they come into a trust structure. And I
Yep.
think we do explain that as well to clients, but I think just that comes at the end where, the realized gain comes after a sale. So it's kind of like it always depends if the client intends to sell the property. So we can't always say you can get those negative gearing benefits, but we can always explain that there's a way to capitalize in that situation for sure.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, every client's different. Every client, they come up with a different financial background. So it's some of the clients they're just gonna understand it straight away. Some of the clients it's gonna take a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So you being the expert in this, just helping the client understand in as many meetings as they want, which is great. Like really appreciate that from your end. You just make our lives easier as well, just by answering all these questions. So just really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, well, I couldn't do without you guys, man. Like, I'll call you guys live on the spot. So it's
Yeah.
I know
No,
the
happy
amount
to
of
help.
work that goes into this. So I really appreciate everything as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We just wanna conclude with one thing. Our team, having said all the benefits and the downsides, our team working in the sync is so much important because what happens is what I'm seeing in the market is that, setting up the trust structure, it is a complex process, but if you have the right team, it can be done within 1 to 2 business days.
Yeah.
So if you've got all the right information and you've made up the mind of buying the property within the trust, we can get it done within the next 1 to 2 business days, and then we can have all the certifications ready, and then all that sort of stuff, and then you can just open the bank account, and then get ready to buy the property. So it's not that complex,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's really important to have the right team because what happens is if you've got the wrong people behind you, so it can take up to, I've seen in a lot of the cases, it can take up to 3 to 4 weeks to set up the trust itself.
Mhm.
And then, you're just so far behind that you potentially lose the property that might have been really good within the trust this structure.
Mhm.
So it's really important to understand, the speed in which you operate is also very important.
I can't stress how important what you said is because
Yep.
acting with speed and acting on the right guidance allows you to act with speed on top of that. So if you are
Yep.
engaged with the right team, you're getting upfront advice that makes sense, which you can kind of understand and implement towards your situation. Then they can go out and act with speed. So if I call Kunal, if I call you, Rahat, I know for a
Yep.
fact that things are getting done very quickly, and you'll be surprised the amount of times clients look at us when we say we can get the trust created in like a day or two, and they're like, "There's no
Yep.
chance that's even possible," because they're not used to this kind of speed in the market, understanding of how to get certain things done. And I think that is invaluable. And clients love that. And they should, because to your point, if there's a market that's moving like it is today, then you're not missing out on any opportunities. You're just capitalizing and you're acting with a lot
Yep.
more confidence. And that allows you to really, realize the true potential of what you can do. So yeah, the right team is everything for sure.
100%. No. Thank you. Thank you for having us, Raghav. Really
Oh,
Thank you.
pleasure to
love
have
the
you guys,
podcast.
man. All good.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Raghav. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. You enjoy.
Thank you. Bye.